Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. This is how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today, Alan. This guy I just met. He is smart. That's the one word I'm gonna use. He's talking about stuff, and I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but it's really cool stuff. Generative Engine Optimization. For about 2 years, and 15 years he's been in optimization and utilizing AI to do so, which is interesting. He's got a book out. That'll all be in the show notes. He's got an interesting story, which we will get into on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So yeah, let's dig into stuff we were chatting about before, and I wanted to make sure it was on here, so we stopped it. Let's go into stuff. You graduated from high school, and you said pretty quick you were in the White House. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had just graduated college, and Columbine had happened, and I had been starting to work in the kind of youth marketing space, and I received a call to go to the White House, and
wow.
I ended up, it was the last year of the Clinton administration, and I ended up working being paid to work at the White House for a year. Craziest thing, and really inspiring, and kind of put my career in motion in ways that were just incredible. So,
what was the White House like?
You would be there, and for first thing was Clinton would walk into a room, and right away there's 100 people in the room. Alan, love what you're doing with the program, things you're doing with the young people, and he'd have a suggestion for you. And then he'd go right to the next person, know exactly who they were, what they did. And my now wife came up with me one time, and there were international things going on, and then you're at work. And so that was pretty incredible. And I met just so many industry people. That one of the most interesting experiences was I worked with young people at the time. After Columbine, was one of them telling, we were at a board meeting, and all these Clintons there and all these business leaders, and the young person tells them that they were incorrect about something. And it was just the coolest thing, so.
That's awesome. I love that. And then from there, where did you go from there?
From there, I went to work at Omnicom, which is a massive holding company for ad agencies. And sort of once the White House, I just met so many people in industry and senior positions. And I was contacted by the head of this massive global company. He met me in his plane. And that was my interview. And just so you know, I come from, my dad was a mechanic, my mom was a teacher. This is not the kind of things that happen, or I would ever expect to have happened. But I worked at Omnicom for 10 years. And then I went on my own, and I've been doing technology projects since then. And I can tell you about the craziest one, if it has to do with the FBI. So I can tell you about that one as well.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, the craziest program I did was, and this didn't relate to the White House. This, my career was moving on. I was working and building things. I have 2 patents, and I got a call that this was when Twitter was still Twitter, and they basically wanted someone to help them decode Twitter and help them with gang violence in Chicago. And I ended up, at the time, Twitter left a mark where you were, and I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible. But basically left this mark where you were, and then you could create something that then showed you what was said at that moment, at that place, and sort of tracking that down to the location, to what was said. And the FBI was able to use it to create this whole deterrent network. So it was really what I guess would scare people, that you could actually do that but to do that to help them was great.
That's cool. And then, yeah, you went into some of the stuff, and then you had a tragedy at some point. How old were you? And tell the listeners a little bit about what happened and what was a big catalyst for you.
Yeah, I had, it's actually what led to the White House. And my mom was a school teacher. She was the head of her union in a very small school district, only two schools, a high school and an elementary school. And she was was fighting for better wages for teachers and for them to be able to compete. And she was killed in a hit and run during the strike. And I moved home to take care of my dad. I have one older brother who was already into his life at that point. I was just graduating college, and I ended up taking care of my dad, starting to work on youth, marketing was just what was in my mind in terms after my mom. And I ended up founding a nonprofit, which is what I did after Omnicom. So, but yeah, she was really just in terms of giving back. My wife and I still have a nonprofit, and we have a permanent art installation in New York, which I'll send you pictures of after. It's really cool, of artwork that kids made. My wife's an art therapist, so I sort of make sure that the bills are paid, and she keeps the charity piece going, and then I do that whenever I can, but to kind of keep my mom's work going.
So you started the nonprofit after your mom was killed?
Yeah, it's and because of having worked at the White House, we were able to at that time work with MTV and all these folks and about youth violence, and there about 1 million young people run through that program. And then there became a point I had made a commitment where I wouldn't take money from anything that I was started, connected to my mom. So I needed to get back to work or get to work. So then we kind of switched over to my wife doing the nonprofit work, and I would work. And so that's kind of how I ended up there.
Well, that's amazing. And then do you have kids, Alan?
I do. I have 2 boys.
Right. Yeah.
And my younger son, they're both musicians. On the other side of my wall here, our house was built in 1700. So on the other side of this wall, I built a whole music studio and area where they can record with their friends and play. And my youngest son got a 4-year scholarship to the New School in New York, and he's for music. And so that's pretty exciting. He's a singer-songwriter, so not the type of musician that normally gets a scholarship. But he's really good, and he actually just dropped his second album on Spotify and all the recording. It's my last name, and his first name is Maz, M-A-Z. Mazar is his full name. My wife's Persian, so my wife's from Iran. So Mazi has an Iranian Persian first name.
Awesome. That's very cool. And so now you're doing, explain what you do exactly. Generative Engine Optimization. What exactly is that? And how do you recommend people utilize it or work with it, in order to become successful themselves? Yes.
And it impacts all of us. So in the old world, pre-AI, search, Google, you put something in, it goes out and finds it, and it brings you back 10 choices, the blue links, the 10 choices, and you pick, which one is most relevant, usually above the fold. And with AI has to learn it. So if you think about, they're basically building a world without a map, all of the different Perplexity and ChatGPT, and Google. If you use the Chrome browser, you're using Gemini ever since September. So you're using AI for your search, and it only knows what it's learned. And that's the difference with traditional search. So you genuinely can go invisible. I've worked with brands that are household names, and they're going invisible because AI doesn't know their household names. They haven't structured their site, they haven't created their messaging, and I can walk through sort of what people need to do in order to make sure, whether it's a church or a local business, or like my son as a musician, what you need to do today to make sure AI knows you and will return you in search. Because as we move over to all AI over the next 2 years, you could genuinely go invisible if AI doesn't learn who you are.
How do you train it that way?
The first thing you want to do is, if you have a website and if you use Wix or one of the companies to create your website, if you have a personal site that you've created, you can go in and look for SEO on there, and they'll have something called GEO, which is the Generative Engine Optimization. And what the GEO does is it's going to drop a little piece of code called a schema into your site, and it'll tell the AI, hey, look over here. This person has this business. This person has a podcast, and you should know who they are. And that's kind of your first step. And then from there, what it is. So it was funny earlier when you asked me what, when I was doing my, because that is one of the most important things, is to be clear about what you do. And I'm going to a college in 2 weeks to do an AI readiness workshop with some graduating seniors, because they need to be really clear about what you do. So your description that you put on to Instagram or Facebook, that it's about 150 characters that you're putting in. You need to use that same description in some way everywhere now, because the AI will get confused. It thinks you are this person, and that's what it knows you as. If you do multiple things, you need to make sure you're really clear about those multiple things now, because it will get confused and not trust you. So I mentioned that I have 2 patents. Every time I mention my patents now, I have to include a link to the the registration, because AI won't believe that they're my patents unless it can physically see that they're mine. Some of that's going to improve over the next 2 years, but a lot of it is AI needs to trust you and believe that you are you. First, they need to meet you, and then believe that you're who you say you are. So being consistent with all your descriptions, dropping that schema into your site, which which all the web provide, they're making that easy for you to do. You just need to look for that GEO, and then being really clear about what it is you do, and making sure that AI knows you in that way. Yeah.
Well, where do you see this going in the next 5 to 10 years with AI?
So on my end, at least, so I had worked with Ford for 7 years, and when that program ended, I took 8 months off to really learn this, and I would recommend people learning AI more than just, I'm going to use ChatGPT to write a note, is starting to use it in some way for your scheduling. Use it in a small way that you start to get familiar with it, because at least here in the US, without the legislation, it is going to be everywhere and in everything. And sort of, if you need to work, you need to learn how to use it. And that's how I approached it. And thank goodness I did, because at least the GEO is going to be around for a long time. It's going to change. Like I mentioned, 2 years, because in 2 years, it's going to be automated. So it's going to speed up. And a lot of things will unfortunately speed up over the next 2 years. So becoming familiar with it now is really important. There was a lot of jumping the gun in terms of eliminating jobs, because what AI is best at right now is repeatable tasks. And those are the jobs that have the most risk. Um, but writers are actually one of the highest paid jobs now in AI, because there's so much AI slop where it's writing for people that even NVIDIA are hiring pools of writers to write really good content that people will read.
So we're not getting rid of people. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Utilize it. Don't slaughter
Have
it.
agency, I think, I wrote an article about that, about having agency. So when you go on to use ChatGPT, don't let it do something for you 100%. Make sure you tell it and describe what you want, and always try to maintain some control. And if you can do that now, as people start to use it to take control of things, you're ready and in a habit already of being in control. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it seems important to me too. That's awesome. Very cool. And so what's your ideal client and who do you look for, Ellen?
I just am finishing a project right now for the Great Salt Lake, where Utah only has a 45-day legislative period. So their legislators only work for 45 days. They have to get all of the legislation approved and passed in those 45 days. And I helped a number of organizations to basically take the GEO to code to make sure that everything connected to the lake was correct, so that the legislators were not getting misinformation, could not come with misinformation and try a short fund or not take action because they really need to take action. And I loved that work. It was really hard, which I really liked. There was a lot to it. And a lot of pages that needed to be explained to AI, a lot of things that needed to be explained to AI. And then your social media becomes really important, because everything we do now is training data, unfortunately or fortunately. Every post you make, AI is, so it's different than when we were young and thought that, oh my gosh, my drinking last night is going to be on my Facebook. Now the AI is going to remember it forever. And it becomes part of what its profile persona of you. So posting to social media things that are very similar helps the AI to learn. So for like the Great Salt Lake, every other day it's posting about the lake's levels and how important that is, or what's being the water, so that it learned what's correct. So that was, and then I think I felt like I learned every day on that new things. So kind of taking that to companies, small. I primarily work on larger companies, but I do enjoy helping out small businesses because it's very immediate, and they need the help today more than anyone. So
awesome. Well, if you have any questions on this, like I said, we'll have all of Ellen, he'll send me all of his information. It'll all be in the show notes. Feel free to reach out. If you're like me a little bit, this is like over my pay grade. I don't understand it all, but I know it's important. So like I said, reach out to someone that understands it. In wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, and then anything we didn't touch on that would be really impactful for our listeners. First and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Think about what you enjoy. That when my mom first passed away, I got really involved in trying to keep her memory going and do her work and what she was. And then I think when I started really focus on myself, I was able to be a part of it with my kids and with my wife and just keep moving. So
cool. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
I'll say the why first, and then I'll mess up the quote. But my dad was for some reason, we're not a huge athletic family, but my dad was a really big Vince Lombardi fan. And so that was the Green Bay Packers when I was little. And he had this quote, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And it was kind of that, but in the sense of you're always winning is, for yourself. And so, but I always liked that.
Cool. Third and final question. What's one or word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh, that's a really hard one. Um, I think it's a good husband and dad, I think is probably but I know that's not one word, but that would
cool.
be.
I said one word or a sentence, so that's perfect.
Yeah, so a good, yeah.
Yeah, that's all good. That's awesome. You run into someone in a coffee shop. What's something we didn't touch on today that you think would be really impactful for our listeners to hear?
You can make money with AI today, and that's something I mentioned. I was going to the school in a couple of weeks, and they're going to need to they're going to find one job or a bunch of jobs, and you really can with AI today find multiple jobs. 4 to 5 is what you can actually put an income together. So I would probably talk about that.
Awesome. Guys, let's go out there. If we can change one life or one starfish at a time together, we can help change the world. Thanks for you being on, Alan.
Thank you so much. Really, this was great. Thank you so much.